Ann Lee and Peter Paul.
Did you recall Mr. Paul? Did you recall working with him at all?
I discovered that in the filings that Hillary's campaign filed with the FEC, they had entirely omitted any reference to any of my contributions. The Clintons took $2 million from me and hid it.
Now, what we're looking at here is the largest election law fraud in the history of the United States.
And he told the feds that the Clinton campaign lied about it.
Everything.
Chief of Public Integrity finally indicted David Rosen.
The feds charging David Rosen with intentionally understating contributions for a Hollywood fundraising gala.
Hillary Clinton's former chief fundraiser under fire
for allegations of lying about the cost of a fundraiser put together on her behalf.
The judge that officiated over the Rosen trial was appointed by the Clintons.
The judge went out of his way, took every possible effort to make certain that everyone on that jury knew that Hillary Clinton had nothing whatever to do with what Mr. Rosen did. The whole idea was we have to make sure that Hillary is completely out of this, and we have to make sure that Peter Paul is totally discredited.
Senator Clinton has not been charged in the case.
Seeing here is a corruption of the political process, a corruption of the electoral process.
Hillary Clinton and her representatives have been able to squash investigations in all three branches of government.
Those Senate hearings on campaign fundraising focus today on former restaurant owner Charlie Tree, who raised more than $1 million for President Clinton and the Democrats. The money has since been returned. Investigators think that a lot of it came from one very elusive man in Asia. ABC's Linda Douglas reports.
Meet one of the most mysterious suspects in the campaign finance investigation, Yingluck Singh, also known as Mr. Wu, a multimillionaire from the Portuguese colony of Macau on the tip of mainland China. But today, an FBI agent working for the Senate committee testified that Wu is not just a businessman, but an advisor to the Chinese government, money to his friend Charlie Tree. Tree, in turn, gave huge donations to the Democratic Party.
Overall, it appears to me that Mr. Tree relied upon Mr. Wu's foreign wire transfers to make his contributions to the DNC.
Senators were stunned to learn that beginning in 1994, Wu wired nearly $1 million to Tree, the former Little Rock restaurant owner and friend of President Clinton's. A mind-numbing chart showed how Tree moved the money through various accounts.
In your opinion, did Mr. Tree launder money? Yes, sir, in my opinion, he did.
What did Mr. Wu want? Access to the president, in part. ABC News has learned Mr. Wu visited the White House at least 6 times.
Hillary Clinton is just now sending back those dirty campaign dollars from former fugitive fundraiser Norman Hsu.
Senator Hillary Clinton is in the news tonight, having nothing to do with her standing in the early race for president. This story instead has to do with financing that run for president, specifically a big donor with a problem in his past and money that has now been turned away.
He is one of Hillary Clinton's biggest fundraisers, Norman Hsu, a wealthy New York businessman who's given $250,000 to a who's who of Democratic candidates in the last 3 years. But Hsu is also a fugitive, wanted in California in connection with a 1991 fraud case. The Clinton campaign initially defended Hsu, listed on her campaign honor roll as a man of integrity.
That was before Hsu was arrested last week. The mega fundraiser is now being investigated for allegedly violating election laws.
He was the largest bundler for any campaign for president this year. And a bundler is a person who literally collects checks from colleagues. Since The federal statute, the McCain-Feingold Act, doesn't let you contribute more than $2,300. So he gets 400 people, and they each give a check for $2,300, and he hands all these checks over to Hillary Clinton. She has a voracious appetite for cash, and she apparently doesn't care where it comes from. She and her husband have a pattern of financial relationships with Asian people that usually result in a lot of something coming back to them, like speaking fees to her husband, like contributions to her husband's library in Arkansas. The question here is, what was the quid pro quo? What did Mr. Hsu ask for, or what does he expect to get from a President Hillary Clinton? He's facing 15 years in jail for a crime that he was convicted of in a federal court in California, and then he fled to Hong Kong. He was just arrested for that crime last week. He was convicted in 1992.
He knew he was a fugitive fundraiser wanted by the feds. It was only after Norman Hsu was hospitalized for getting sick on board a train that he was finally recognized.
Fox News is talking about it. He's Hillary Clinton's money launderer, and he's a fugitive, and somehow he got sick, and he's at St. Mary's, and we confirmed it, so we're trying to get up there.
Let me ask you a question about campaign finance and Norman Hsu. We're going to show him now. Of course, he's the gentleman who's now been arrested. You had to return about $850,000 that he raised for your campaign, and I know that you returned the money, but a lot of people look at this and say they're afraid that they're going to go back to the days of 1996 where there were some campaign finance violations that many Democrats feel cost President Clinton a couple of points in the final days of the election.
First saved message sent Monday, March 26th at 6:44 p.m. Norman, it's Hillary. What am I going to do with you, Norman? You are working so hard for me that I just don't even know what to say anymore.
U.S. prosecutors accused John Ashe, former president of the UN General Assembly, of taking more than $1 million in bribes from Chinese businessmen.
The death related to the Democratic National Committee is offering more questions than answers. When America's Rachel Roboto has more on the case of Seth Conrad Rich.
In the wake of the tragic death of DNC staffer Seth Conrad Rich, many questions remain unanswered. Rich was killed in the early hours of Sunday, July 10th, just one block from his Washington, D.C. home in Bloomingdale. Rich's mother, Mary Rich, told police he was on the phone with his girlfriend at the time of the incident. According to reports, Rich's girlfriend heard scuffling noises on the other end of the line, and when she asked what was going on, Rich told her not to worry and hung up the phone. Authorities say Rich was shot twice in the back and had bruises on his hands, knees, and face. Police initially reported his death as a robbery gone wrong due to the high number of recent thefts in the area. However, police did admit nothing was stolen from Rich, even though he had cash, a cell phone, and a watch on him at the time of his death. No suspects have been arrested, and police are not releasing the type of weapon used to kill Rich at this time. Before his death, Seth Conrad Rich was investigating several cases involving the DNC's electoral fraud and voter suppression, and was set to testify in the case of Hillary Clinton's email investigation. The content of Rich's scheduled testimony remains unclear, but it does raise questions about the recent scandal involving the DNC. WikiLeaks exposed nearly 20,000 emails from top Democratic National Committee officials, revealing attempts by the committee to derail Bernie Sanders' campaign. After reviewing the content of the emails, some officials are accusing the DNC of committing acts of voter suppression. Several emails detail specific agendas on how officials could turn Democratic voters away from Sanders, including spreading false allegations Sanders is an atheist. Whether or not Rich was aware of these emails remains unclear. Rich's murder follows another unusual death of a former UN President, John Ashe. Authorities first reported Ashe's death as a heart attack, but later recanted statements after an autopsy report showed he died due to a crushed windpipe. Ashe died last month, just a few days before he was set to testify with his co-defendant Ed Lapsang, a Chinese businessman who illegally funneled millions of dollars to American businessman Charlie Tree, who then used the money to donate to the DNC during Bill Clinton's re-election. Charlie Tree was also rumored to be a Clinton Foundation donor during Bill Clinton's reign as president. Prosecutors accused Ashe of accepting thousands of dollars in bribes from the Chinese businessman when he served as a UN president in 2013. the same year Hillary Clinton served as Secretary of State. This comes as the IRS announced its plans to launch an investigation into the Clinton Foundation